It is Tuesday, March 22nd, 7 p.m. here in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's edition of Nation's Pastime in the nation's capital, WCUA's only baseball-centric talk show. I'm your host, Andrew Snaith, joined here today with my co-host, James Higgins, and as always, we'll be breaking down the latest in the baseball world, which it's a lot of huge free agent signings and trades took place in between the last time we talked to you last Tuesday. But first, before we get into that, thank you all so much for tuning in live to tonight's program. We're live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. here on WCUA Radio, and our shows are posted after on YouTube in podcast form. So go ahead, follow our Instagram at NatPastimeCap. That's at NatPastimeCap. You can get all of the updates on when we post those shows and any updates about the show as well, like tonight, how we started a little bit late, and we're going to go over about 3 or 4 minutes as well to supplement that. So if you follow our Instagram, hey, you're not left wondering, hey, what's with the delay? Why aren't they on? You'll get all the updates there. So go ahead, follow Instagram at NatPastimeCap. And as always, if you want to call in and discuss anything baseball related, that number's 202-319-5106, 202-319-5106. And James, in the past week, we had a flurry of stars switching teams, and we have an hour here. Let's just go right into it and break it down, because we could probably talk about this for 3 hours.
The stove is flaming hot.
The stove is nuclear right now. It's the surface of the sun, and it warms my heart to see that, because the stove was ice cold for 99 days.
Oh yeah. This is like NFL free agency, NBA free agency. MLB finally gets its own taste of what it's like to have all the action happen on one end or the other. And honestly, it's great for the fans, because the intrigue and suspense doesn't have to wait for 4 months. We get it all, in the span of 2 days right before the lockout, now in the span of about, 10 or 11 days after the lockout, and it's really great.
Absolutely. It's great indeed. So why don't we just jump into the biggest one? We were talking about this a little bit last week, and he signed right after our show. I think it was a day or two later, and that, of course, is Freddie Freeman, who is officially a Los Angeles Dodger. He will not be a Brave for life. Matt Olson takes over there with his big extension. I believe it was an 8-year deal. He'll be there for the next 8 years, the foreseeable future. And Freddie Freeman gets 6 years and $160+ million to go be the first baseman of probably the best lineup in all of baseball.
Yeah, and one of the best lineups that we've seen in Major League Baseball history. I mean, you look at what Freddie Freeman brings to the table: an MVP, a World Series championship, a 300 lifetime hitter, a consummate professional both on and off the field, one of the best players in the game, not just one of the best first basemen in the game, one of the best all-around players. He's a Gold Glove defender, he's a Silver Slugger, he's an MVP. I mean, the resume speaks for itself. And when you think about all the former MVPs the Dodgers have in that lineup, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, now Freddie Freeman, of course you have Justin Turner, you have Max Muncy, you have Trey Turner, and then a former MVP in the rotation, Clayton Kershaw. I mean, to have 4 MVPs on the team is just insane. It's one of the best lineups that has ever been assembled, and I think it's a true testament to the Dodgers, and their willingness to spend and their willingness to win. And I've seen a lot of people talk about how this is bad for the sport, how the big boys keep getting who they want. Well, guess what? If you want to win, go spend. Like, all the credit to the Dodgers for going for seeing another hole in their lineup. If you want to view Gavin Lux as a hole, he's not, but see a weakness in your lineup, or not even see a weakness in your lineup, but just going out and getting the best talent available. And I've talked about this on here numerous times. The Dodgers don't have a lot of money on the books after 2022. They have, obviously, Mookie Betts on the books. They have, their arbitration figures or their rookie deals, whatever it may be. And then Trevor Bauer's $18 million, depending on what happens with him. I'm not entirely sure. But really, the only sure thing right now is Mookie Betts' $36 million on the books.
Yeah.
So why not build your foundational core with Betts and Freeman for the next 6 years? Obviously, Mookie will be there for the next 10. And then, you identify whether you want to re-sign Bellinger or Turner or Buehler, which 2 out of those 3 you want to commit money to. And Andrew Friedman's done a great job building the farm system, building the pipeline, building the major league team, and getting the best talent available. And one thing quickly, Andrew, I want to say.
Of course.
Yes, he turned down, Freeman did turn down $140 million over 5 years from the Braves, and people are asking, why would he turn that offer down? It's similar to the Dodgers offer. Clearly, he wanted that 6th year, and he wanted to win. I saw Chipper Jones blast Freddie Freeman yesterday, that if he wanted to be a Brave for life, he should have accepted a deal, and he turned down 5 years, $135 million at the All-Star break. Well, guess what? If the Braves wanted Freeman, they would have given him that 6th year. Paying him that 6th year at the age of 38 after everything he's done for the franchise would have been nothing, and it's not like he's going to decline right now. Even if his age 38 season was bad, guess what? You still have the universal DH. and you would have still had the next 4 or 5 years of Freeman still hitting at a high level.
Yeah, that's a great point. And excuse me, I got to ask you about if you saw the video. Excuse me again, about where Freddie Freeman was asked about his thoughts on GM Alex Anthopoulos and his quote crocodile tears after not being able to sign him. Now I have my opinions about that. In case you're not aware, there was a video surfacing after the Matt Olson trade where Anthopoulos got a little emotional, shed some tears when asked if this meant the end of Freddie Freeman in Atlanta. And Freeman was asked about this in an interview on MLB Network, I believe it was, and kind of just scoffed at it. And he was like, "Yeah, I saw him. That's my comment. That's all I have to say."
Yeah, I mean, if Anthopoulos wanted to re-sign him, he would have.
Agree.
They gave and another thing, they gave Olson more money than they gave Freeman. Now, yes, it was over more years, but if you still look at the guaranteed dollars, Olson got $6 million more than Freddie Freeman. So there's really no excuse for Atlanta to not have signed Freeman. And obviously, Olson might be the better player over the life of the deal because of age, but in terms of what they've done over their career and impact in the clubhouse, you can't replace Freddie Freeman. So it's going to be something delicate for Bryant, Snitker, and the rest of the Braves coaching staff to monitor and handle throughout the year. Obviously, it's nothing that they did wrong. It's nothing on the players, but it's a situation where a new leader is going to have to step up, whether it be Olson, whether it be Ronald Acuna Jr., who is going to return in May. He announced he was back with a home run and live BP. But, we'll see what happens. The division's a very competitive division, and I'm sure when he returns to Atlanta, when the Dodgers play in Atlanta, he will get a resounding standing ovation all 3 games he's there.
Without question. Now, before we move on from Freddie Freeman, because we got a lot more to talk about, I got to ask you one question, James. You kind of alluded to this. They need another leader, and they have a lot of talent left on that team. Don't get me wrong. That still probably is the favorite in the NL East to win it. But my question to you is, if you're a superstar on the Atlanta Braves right now, if you're an Austin Riley, if you're an Acuna, right? Maybe not so much Olson, but what kind of precedent does this set? What kind of effects does this have on you if you look at this and say, well, I guess what I do for this franchise doesn't matter because they're going to go with the quote-unquote smart move rather than remaining, quote-unquote, again, loyal to your players.
Well, here's the other thing is that they did sign Freeman to an extension way back, 8 years, $135 million in 2013. So I don't think, with that first contract, if they came to Austin Riley after this season and wanted to give him 7 years and $120 million, I don't think he'd say no. Right, it would probably take him to where Freddie is at right now, to his age 31, 32 season, and then Riley would take it from there. So it's the same thing that they've always done. They're very smart about it. They should have paid Freeman, and even though Freeman will not spend the second half of his career as a Brave, he should still go down as one of the greatest Braves to ever play. I mean, he won as many World Series in far fewer seasons than Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and John Smoltz, and Andrew Jones never won a World Series. Chipper Jones only won 1 World Series. They all played in Atlanta, with the exception of Maddux. They all played in Atlanta 15 to 20 years. Freddie debuted in 2011, so he played there 10 years, won a World Series, won an MVP, did everything that you could do in Atlanta. He should go down as one of the greatest Braves of all time, and depending on how his career arc projects, he'll probably still go into the Hall of Fame as an Atlanta Brave, assuming he keeps this production up and get there, unless he just goes nuclear with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There was talk, if Freddie Freeman resigns here, if he keeps it up, is he Mr. Brave, right? You always talk about that, and I think at this point, that's pretty much closed the book on that. I think it's still Chipper Jones at this point. Yeah,
it's still Chipper Jones, but, I'm sure one day the Braves will realize what they did. Everyone will reconcile. There will be hugs, there will be kisses, there will be handshakes, and Freddie Freeman will sign a one-day contract and retire an Atlanta Brave.
I think that's exactly true. So moving on from Freddie Freeman, and a quick reminder, you want to call in about anything baseball-related, any of the big signings, the big trades that are going on around the sport, 202-319-5106 is that number. 202-319-5106. Well, James, I think we have to move on to, I would say, the most shocking news throughout all of the offseason so far. We're going to talk about Carlos Correa. Now, Carlos Correa is a guy that I think everyone universally agreed, hey, this guy is getting 10-plus years. He's getting $300-plus million. He's the top talent on the market. This is a lock. Huge deal is incoming. And we heard rumors here and there that teams were going to offer him deals in that area, right? The Astros, it was reported, they were looking at around an 8-year deal. I think it was reported something like $260, $270 with a couple opt-outs. And we even saw the Orioles get involved. And apparently they had an offer on the table for 10 years, $300 million, maybe a little bit more. But he doesn't go with one of them. Carlos Correa gets the least amount of guaranteed years of any of the elite shortstops on the free agent market. A 3-year, $105 million deal with the Minnesota Twins. Now, James, what I want to ask you about first and foremost, I am of the opinion that this is incredibly smart because of the 2 opt-outs that are in this. Do you agree? Is this a deal that Correa is going to benefit from in the long run?
For sure, because he'll be back on the free agent market next year. I don't see the only way he won't is if the Twins are so enamored by his play that they scratch the rest of this deal and give him 10 years, $330 million, whatever he's offering. He'll be back on the free agent market next offseason, barring an injury. He is very injury prone, so barring a big injury or barring the Twins just scratching the rest of the deal and giving him the money. I think it is great because he's 28 right now.
Yeah.
So it'll take him through his age 31 season. He's still, if for some reason he were to remain a Twin for all 3 years of this deal, he would still be able to hit the free agent market again at an age where he could still go big. But I think this is great for both sides. You look at everything Correa has done. He wasn't just the best shortstop on the market. He was the best overall player on the market, and one of the best overall players we've seen hit free agency in quite some time. You talk about the talent that's there. I mean, he was the number 1 overall pick in 2012, a World Series champion, Rookie of the Year, multiple Silver Sluggers, Platinum Glove, Gold Glove. Only thing missing from his resume is an MVP. I mean, and that'll probably come one day. I think for Carlos, he didn't get the offer that he wanted to get, but I think a part of that was during the lockout, he switched agencies. I don't know who he was with before, but he's with Scott Boras now. That might have something to do with it in terms of not getting a big long-term deal. But for as good of a player as Correa is, it is a little head-scratching that no team wanted to go above Corey Seager's 10 years, $325 million, or even, he was probably shooting above Tatis's Lindor's 10 years, $341 million. I'm surprised that nobody wanted to give him at least Seager's deal. But at the end of the day, he went to the team who gave him the highest average annual value. He has 2 opt-outs, so he can opt out this year, or he can opt out next year, or obviously after year 3 he becomes a free agent again, and he can pick and choose again next year. And another thing to keep in mind, if the Twins for some reason, if their contention plan this year goes south, they can always trade him at the deadline. Now, one thing with that is, why would teams give up prospects for him, knowing that he'll be on the market again in the offseason, and they could have had him for however much they wanted to give him at the beginning of the offseason. But I think this is tremendous for the Twins. You look at what they've done this offseason. They acquired Sonny Gray. They're trying to compete in the weirdest way possible, and that's no insult to them. That's a good thing. They retained Byron Buxton. They gave him a long-term deal either at the end of last season or right before the lockout. I don't remember which one of the two it was. They have a young core in place. They're rumored to try to go get another pitcher, whether it's Montas, whether it's Minaya. They traded for Gary Sanchez, an unloaded salary, Josh Donaldson's salary, which is crazy that the Yankees were rumored to go get Carlos Correa. They didn't, but they gave the Twins the financial flexibility to go get Carlos Correa.
Somewhere Robbie is very upset right now.
Yeah, for sure. They acquired Gio Urshela. Obviously, Royce Lewis, the number 1 pick in 2017, is a shortstop coming up through the system. I'm sure he'll play some second base. Signing Dylan Bundy to a 1-year prove-it deal, I like what Minnesota's doing. I like what Minnesota's doing, and really, besides the White Sox, that team, that division, the AL Central, lacks competitiveness.
Yeah.
Just in general, lacks competitiveness. So I love what they're doing, saying we're here to win now. We're not going to go big with $350 million over 10 years, but we're gonna give Carlos a year to 3 years, depending on however long he wants to stay, and we're gonna win now. And I think both the Sonny Gray trade and, of course, signing the best free agent player on the market shows that they're ready to win now, even if it's not the division, even if it's for a wild card. The Twins need to get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, how great is this for the Minnesota fans? I mean, this pretty much materialized out of nowhere. You heard conversations that the Twins were looking for a shortstop after they traded Connor Falefa, and there were some rumors regarding Trevor Story. Of course, that didn't happen, and Carlos Correa ended up being their guy. And, James, it's funny, this was actually broken by, like, a random local Texas guy who I guess had the inside scoop. He was literally, like, he worked in a local network in, I believe it was around Arlington, Texas, something like that, which is very funny because none of the national guys at all were reporting the Twins' interest in Carlos Correa. And, I guess that's testament to the Twins for not leaking their plans. But I agree with you on so many levels. This is a great move for the Twins. It's a wide-open division besides those White Sox, and it's just great for the fans. There's another move here that I'm going to agree is also great for the fans, but it really just seemed like the Stars, they spread out a little bit, and they're giving some of these lower-tier teams giving their fans something to cheer about this summer.
Yeah, and if you're a big market team and a competitor, obviously, like, how did every competitor not offer Carlos Correa a deal like this?
Yeah, this deal, exactly.
And this, obviously, if you're the Dodgers or even the Red Sox, they made their move so that we're not coming at every competitor. In Tampa Bay, yes, they were in on Freeman and in on Olsen, but they couldn't commit that much per year. They could commit 27 to 28. They couldn't commit 35. But if you're the Yankees, how do you not offer Carlos Correa this deal? Like, why would you trade? Why would you take $50 million on it in Josh Donaldson over 2 years to not offer Correa $55 more million over 3 years? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. If you're the Astros, why would you not offer Correa this deal? If you didn't want to go 10 years, give him 3 years, 110.
Yeah.
Just up it a little bit. He definitely would have re-signed in Houston for at least one more year. That team is ready to go to the World Series again. I mean, if that they're even the White Sox. Even the as loaded as they are, they could have just gone all in and been like, see you later, Twins, Like, I don't understand why some of these teams who are competitors would not offer Correa this deal. But this is especially aimed for the New York Yankees. Mm-hmm. Like, there is no excuse for them to take on $50 million or $46 million, whatever it is, in Donaldson's contract and then not offer Correa anything. Just, they gave the Twins the financial flexibility to do this. They should not have taken on Donaldson's contract. They should have just gone all in on Correa.
Well, I think the biggest thing with the Yankees, though, to touch on them for a second, we are going to be joined on the show a little bit later by Robbie Cruz via phone, and I'm sure he'll give his takes on this, but you got to remember, this is a Yankees organization that not only are they not as willing to spend anymore, but they are very, very high on their two top prospects.
I totally understand. With Volpe and Perez, they're two top shortstop prospects ranked number 1 and number 3 in the system. I totally get that. But if you have a chance to get Correa, why not go get him? Because all prospects are, at the end of the day, are lottery tickets. You don't know how they're going to work out. I mean, and the Yankees should, teams in general, but especially the Yankees, teams should be willing to trade their prospects or for major league talent.
Yeah.
Right? For legitimate major league talent that can help them. And it's like, not everyone is going to be the Dodgers where they have this next pipeline. I think that's what Chaim Bloom is trying to do in Boston. I mean, their farm system in 1 year went from 23rd ranked to 9th ranked, and it's only getting better. But those are the two outliers. And the Red Sox are not there yet. So the Dodgers are the only outlier that can really do that. And the Padres were there for a while. The Red Sox under Dombrowski had that, but guess what? They got Chris Sale, they got Craig Kimbrell, traded away 8 prospects. What did it lead to? A World Series title. So it's like and you have to be willing to give up the right ones. They didn't give up Mookie Betts. They didn't give up Xander Bogaerts. They gave up Moncada. They gave up Kopech, Manny Margot. You have to be willing to give up the right ones. I'm not saying the Yankees should trade everyone, but they should trade away some of those prospects for major league help, whether it's starting pitching, whether it's an outfielder. The Yankees they are a flawed roster. They need help. They should be willing to do that for prospects. And I don't understand why they wouldn't sign Correa just because they're high on prospects who will be up in a year or two, not even on opening day in 2022.
Yeah, it is a little perplexing, not just the Yankees, but just teams in general. Like you said, I mean, if you could get him on this deal, this 3-105 deal, I can think of 10 to 12 teams that should have offered him that instantly. Sure. And it's just, it is mind-boggling to me. I still think it also is a little weird that I'm going to be watching Correa wear a Minnesota Twins uniform this year. But you know what? Hey, credit to the Twins. They saw a market that allowed them to do a unique move and get a superstar for potentially 1 to 3 years. And, I hope it works out for them. All the best.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope it works out for the Twins too. I hope Correa lights it up in Minnesota. Good for them, good for the fan base in Minnesota. They deserve to get back to the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy the Yankees didn't go get Correa, but from an objective baseball standpoint, there was no reason why they shouldn't have gone to go get him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, why don't we move on then to another move that made a lot of fans happy, had some people scratching their heads as well, and we'll kind of break that down here. That, of course, is the Kris Bryant deal. Now, I don't think a single person on the show besides Robbie actually thought that Kris Bryant was going to the Rockies. But Kris Bryant went to the Rockies, and he got 7 years and $182 million. All right, so I want to break this down a couple different ways. But my first question for you, James, is this deal seems like an unbelievable amount of money for a guy who is a very good player, but not an elite player.
He's been on that elite path before. Like, this is not
4 years ago, 3 years ago.
19.
Okay, well,
19,
that's fair.
19.
He was pretty good.
I would say the first half of 21.
The first
half of 21. But he's a Boris guy. He's very good. He's not great elite, but he's very good. He's a guy who can play multiple positions. That definitely helps him.
Oh, for sure, that helped him.
He can play third base, left field, right field, center field, first base. we can first base on the side, but those 4 positions he can all play at an elite level. You can plug him in there in a playoff game, in an important game, whatever it is, and you can trust that Chris Bryant will come through defensively wherever it may be. He can hit anywhere in the lineup from first to fifth. He's a very good fastball hitter, obviously. I think Coors Field is only going to play to his strengths. I mean, the dude is a pure power hitter. He's a really good baseball player. He's a high baseball IQ guy. Some people aren't as high on Bryant as I am. I've been high on Bryant ever since he came into the league. He deserved the money he got. I'm glad he got it. It's puzzling that he went to Colorado and that there weren't more suitors.
Willingly, I will add, because especially the biggest thing with me is if I'm Chris Bryant, in a perfect world, I'm taking this deal, but I want an opt-out after the first or second year, and they probably weren't willing to give that. But could you imagine Chris Bryant going to Colorado with an opt-out after the first or second year, absolutely lighting it up, which, by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if he does that at Coors Field, and then re-entering the market.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockies traded him.
Well, that's my other thing. Why?
If they're not contending, because that division is so tough. It's not even an indictment on them. Like, they might win 85 games at some point over the next 7 years. Not counting on it.
Oh, no, I agree.
That division is so loaded.
But you're going to take a look at this Rockies team, right? And my question is, okay, well, let's backtrack a little bit here. And we touched on this last week. You're going to trade away your franchise player, Nolan Arenado, along with $50 million. Along with $50 million to the St. Louis Cardinals. You're going to number one, not trade Trevor Story or John Gray at the deadline, and then number two, not offer John Gray a qualifying offer. Then you're going to let Story walk and go to the Red Sox. And then you go ahead and sign Chris Bryant, one of the biggest names on the market, to this ridiculous mega deal. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is, why would you do this for a guy like Bryant? I know you're high on Bryant, but James, I think we can agree he's not a franchise-altering player for a team like the Rockies. They're not a Chris Bryant away from the playoffs.
Right, and other contenders are. Contenders are a Chris Bryant away from the playoffs or the World Series. That's why I was surprised the Phillies didn't sign Bryant, but
we'll get to that.
They did well. They did well.
We'll
this is not an indictment on the Phillies, but, there are two things that stick out to me. One, I like good for Bryant for getting his money.
Yeah,
they gave him the bag, but the Rockies had their franchise third baseman, and they had Mr. Rocky, and they paid $50 million to let him walk out the door. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't. I understand. If the Rockies were the team that were giving Bryant the most money, I guess you have to go there. But if he saw the way they treated, arguably the guy who was on pace to become the best player in franchise history, and then one of their better players in the young history of the franchise, in Trevor Story, why? If he saw the way they treated two of their best players, why would he go there willingly?
He does have a full no-trade clause.
Yes, he does have a full no-trade, but still, he saw how ownership and the higher-ups treated him, and this is not trying to opinionately bash the Rockies. We've seen everything with Nolan Arenado and with Trevor Story. They did not treat those guys well, and Nolan Arenado is a franchise icon.
If I will play devil's advocate here,
this is a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, no, I agree, but this is a brand new general manager.
Yes, a brand new general manager, but not ownership.
No,
not ownership.
And that's my big thing.
I think
a lot of people
stems from ownership.
Yeah, a lot of people are pulling that card and saying, "Hey, this is a different GM. It's the new direction of the Rockies." But it's not, though, because the brass up top haven't changed.
Good for the new GM. He's done a great job. Inking McMahon today to the extension, signing Bryant. Good for him. He's building a good resume. But this is on ownership and Dick Montfort.
Yes.
They did not treat Nolan Arenado well on the way out. They didn't treat Trevor Story well on the way out. I'm just surprised that Bryant willingly went there because of the way they treated two-star players and because of how tough the division is. I mean, do we really see the Rockies winning a NL West division over the next 7 years?
I don't see them winning one in the next 10 years, if I'm being honest.
Well, I'm going over the life of Bryant's deal. 7 years,
of course, yeah.
No, I don't. Maybe they'll make the playoffs 1 year and expanded postseason if the Padres or Giants have a down year. I don't see the Dodgers having a down year anytime soon.
James, can I tell you what this deal screams to me? It, to me, screams as the Rockies went, oh crap, we don't have a signature guy to hit tanks all year and bring people to Coors Field to watch us be a mediocre baseball team. And then they went, well, Chris Bryant can do that. Let's get him.
But look, here's another thing. The Rockies, if it goes south quick, they can trade him. Because I am sure a team will want Chris Bryant. That contract is not an albatross. And it only takes him to his age 37 season. Mm-hmm. It's not an albatross. It's not a lot of money for an impact bat like Chris Bryant. If the Rockies want to trade him, they will find a suitor.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course he'll have to approve it, but at that point, if they're actively trying to trade him, I don't see why he wouldn't accept a trade to a competitor. And maybe he knows that, and maybe that's why he got the clause, so he can be in control of essentially where he ends up. And I get that, right? But overall, I think we can all agree here in the studio, and it's a puzzling move, but you know what? We're going to have to see how it works out for them, because like James mentioned, not only with Chris Bryant, they had a very, very good deal signed with Ryan McMahon the other day, who, in my opinion, is an incredibly underrated baseball player, both defensively and offensively.
Yeah, and I think Bryant's going to hit 43 home runs this year.
Really? Is that a lock? Is that a number guaranteed?
Over 40. Over 40.
I could easily see
and
that.
He hasn't had an over 40 home run season in his career, so this will be number one for KB.
Yeah, what? MVP was around 38, 39?
39.
Yeah.
Just missed it.
Just missed it, and that was at Wrigley, and it can get pretty brutal there sometimes with the wind. So you're talking about a ballpark that is made for Chris Bryant, and he's now going to spend 7 years there most likely. So, like James said, kudos to the GMs of the Rocky to getting this done, and hopefully Chris Bryant enjoys Colorado over the next 7 years. And quick reminder, you want to call in and talk about any of these signings, Chris Bryant, Trevor Story, right, Carlos Correa, any of these big ones, go ahead, do that. 202-319-5106 is the number. 202-319-5106, a little bit around halfway through the show here. We got two more absolutely huge signings to talk about, but before we do that, we are going to be joined by Robbie Cruz in the studio via phone. Hello, Robbie, you're on the air. How's it going?
Hey, guys, it's going well. Sorry I can't make it today, but love the show. You guys sound great, and you're doing really well.
Thank you so much, Robbie. So I have an assumption of what you're calling to talk about, but why don't you go ahead, let us know. What take do you want to give here on this week's episode?
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you so much for the setup. So this question goes to both of you, but more towards James.
Sure.
James, I think that the Trevor Story deal is going to be an albatross for the Red Sox.
Taking James's word.
New York Yankees to sign Trevor Story, but not for 6 years. What do you think?
Okay, well, I guess we are going to make Trevor Story the next topic here. And, James, why don't you go ahead and have a little conversation there with Robbie about the Trevor Story deal?
Sure. Well, the Red Sox signed Trevor Story Sunday morning to a 6-year, $140 million contract with an opt-out after 4 years, and the 7th year can become an additional team option for $20 million. I believe it's a mutual option. So the maximum value of the deal would be $165 million over 7 years. I'm pumped about the deal. I mean, you look at what Story brings to the table. He's a Gold Glove caliber infielder. He's moving over to second base for 2022. But if Xander Bogaerts leaves, you slide Trevor Story right in at shortstop, and he'll fit in perfectly on the left side of the infield. It brings the Red Sox to arguably the best infield in baseball, but if not a top 3 infield in baseball. I mean, Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Trevor Story, and then Bobby Dahlbeck before the inevitable arrival of Tristan Casas, the top first base prospect in baseball. Story brings everything to the table. He brings Gold Glove defense. He brings a legitimate power bat. He's a guy who his spray charts over the last couple of years at Fenway, like if he I'll get the stats in a minute. I don't want to misquote myself. I'm excited for the Story signing. He provides depth for the lineup. He's a right-handed impact bat to replace Hunter Renfroe. He's a guy who's consistently been a power hitter since his arrival in the big leagues, and he's a guy that relies on power and defense and a little bit of finesse in terms of his running game. He doesn't rely on speed. He's not a big contact guy in terms of how he plays. So I don't see the bat aging poorly, especially at Fenway Park if he can play pepper with the monster.
Robbie, why don't you go ahead?
Can I make a quick point?
No, yes. I was going to say, go ahead. Give your take on why you think it's going to be a bad deal.
Okay, so I will say this. Trevor Story is a top 7 shortstop in baseball potentially.
Sure.
He's fast, he's got power, and he's overall a solid player. But my problem is the fact that he got 6 years, and the other teams were talking about possibly giving him about a $15 million deal. And he gets too much money, in my opinion. And overall, I just don't think it's going to work out. I think that it's an awkward transition to second base. His numbers on the road obviously haven't been good. And I see a lot of potential for a disaster with this contract. And now if you're the Red Sox, you had to sign him because you are probably going to lose Xander Bogaerts next year. Who knows what's going to happen with Rafael Devers. But this was not the guy to get. But I understand why the Red Sox did it. I just think it's going to be a bad contract.
Yeah, if I may, I agree with you, Robbie. I think this was a move the Red Sox had to make, but I agree that it's not going to be a contract that ages very well. He's a very talented player right now. I don't really see him aging as someone who's going to retain all of that and be an elite player for that long, over 6 years. But if you're the Red Sox, like Robbie said, you had to do this because you know you're probably going to lose Xander Bogaerts. Correct me if I'm wrong here, James, but this gives them, like you said, one of the best infields in baseball and makes them this year a serious threat to win the division and go to the World Series.
Yeah, and they can slide him to shortstop next year if Xander leaves. But I think Xander is going to try to seek what Correa was getting this offseason, around $300 million. And I think his market might be towards what Semien and what Story got, maybe a little bit higher. But there's if the Red Sox could also retain Bogaerts, and if you have Story at second and Bogaerts at short, look, Story is a plus defender. Since the start of his career, his DRS is 68. Bogaerts is minus 18. Story is a plus defender, and all right. I got two stats. Last year, Story barreled 9.9% of his batted balls, and that would have put him between J.D. Martinez and Bogaerts in the Sox lineup. He was a top 10 base runner in, according to the metrics, top 10 base runner in Major League Baseball in 2021, which is something the Red Sox desperately need. And over the last 3 years, if Story played at Fenway Park in 19, he would have had 42 home runs, 11 home runs in the 60-game season, and 38 home runs in 2021. And he's plus 36 runs defensive saved in the last 3 years. Bogaerts is minus 18 in the last 3 years. So he's an impact bat, provides plus defense. And, with a guy like that, if he ages poorly per se, it's not going to be a down. We're not going to go down a downhill cliff. It's still going to be solid production. But over the next 3 or 4 years, he's going to be tremendous in the middle of the Red Sox order and in the middle of the Red Sox infield.
Can I make one last point?
Of course.
Please.
All right, so here's why. Okay, I think it's a little bit awkward in the lineup. Where is he going to hit?
Second or sixth. Yeah.
See, I don't like the idea of giving a number 6 hitter $25 million a year.
I mean, that's just how deep the order is.
There's a lot of potential for error, though. I'm telling you, this is a deal that I think that the Red Sox will regret down the road. It makes sense why they signed him, but there's a lot of potential for error.
Why? Because he might hit
guys.
sixth in 2022?
What's that?
Because he might hit sixth this year? Or fifth?
No, just overall, you look at the stats on the road, you look at the fact that he's moving to a new position.
Yeah, but I understand the
also
road stat stuff,
stadium.
but he still goes from one hitter-friendly ballpark at Coors to another one in Fenway Park with the Green Monster. He's a pull hitter. He can play pepper with the Monster.
We'll have to wait and see, James.
That's fair, but
this is a guy who hit 240 last year, or 250.
That's fair, but you can also look at, you can't just judge a guy at Coors at home or on the road. We've seen that with Arenado. We've seen that with who
else left? Coors and was still good.
There was one other guy. Arenado was good. There was someone who was bad. It's unpredictable.
I was gonna say, James, I'm thinking of a lot of guys that left Coors and were horrible. I mean, Corey Dickerson is one of them, and he wasn't horrible.
I'm talking about a big guy though.
Well, I mean,
the only guy who I can think of, aside from Arenado, who was good at Coors Field and then left and was good, was DJ LeMahieu.
Yeah.
DJ LeMahieu's another guy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's literally who I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So
I don't see Trevor Story being a DJ LeMahieu because that's a completely different player.
I mean, they're both power hitting impact bat infielders who have won Gold Gloves. And DJ LeMahieu said the Reds.
He's not a power hitter.
I mean, I think his numbers the last two or the pre-2021 might tell you otherwise, especially in 19 with the juiced balls.
We'll have to wait and see, guys. Again, sorry I couldn't make it into the show this week, but I love the way you guys are broadcasting this. I'll catch you guys around.
Appreciate it.
Robbie, it is an honor as always. Thank you so much for joining us, even with your busy schedule. Do appreciate it indeed. That's a good little segment there on the Trevor Story signing. We're going to talk about it later in the show, but might as well bring it up now. And I think some good points were made both on both sides. I'm somewhere in the middle with this deal. I think, again, this is a deal that the Red Sox had to make, and now that they did make it, I like that team a whole lot better now and their chances to win the division.
I'm pumped.
Yeah.
I'm so pumped.
You should be.
This could be their shortstop of the future for the next. But guess what? Here's another thing. They got Marcelo Meyer in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So Trevor Story might only be at shortstop for a couple of years before they flip him back to second base if Bogaerts leaves. Marcelo Meyer is the number 9 prospect in baseball, and he was drafted less than a year ago. He was drafted in July. Yep. He's 19 years old.
It's a very good time to be a Red Sox fan.
Yeah, and like Trevor Story gives them that impact bat in the middle of the order. You can hit him wherever you want. You can hit anyone in that infield wherever you want. They're all that team is very deep offensively. They can compete with the Blue Jays because of that offense. I'm excited. And he's a Gold Glove defender. Their defense last year was terrible, both in the infield and the outfield. Alex Cora and Chaim Bloom addressed that with Jackie Bradley Jr., even though we know he's not a good hitter. And now Trevor Story. They know they need to be better on the bases. They made the most outs on the bases last year. And in 2019, Trevor Story was top 10 base runner according to the metrics in Major League Baseball last year. So they addressed a lot of areas of need. And here's one last thing before we move on to the Phillies.
Mm-hmm.
Chaim Bloom, before this, had not given out big money. He was with the Rays from 2004 to 2019. So he's never played with big money. He would not give out $140 million unless he and his team didn't think it was worth it.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to throw $140 million out at a Pablo Sandoval and just say, hey, this is a big signing we need to make, come here. He looked at the numbers. He dug deep. He looked at the analytics and the standard numbers. He did everything he needed to do. I'm sure they ran a boatload of projections on him. It was a very smart signing by a very smart leadership team, Chaim Bloom, Sam Kennedy, and all of ownership.
I think there's something to be said that Chaim Bloom decided to give out a big contract, like you said, because this is a guy who, ever since he took over at the Red Sox, his MO has been to not do that. And that's fine because they've been successful since then. But
and he also hasn't needed to. Like, besides Betts, he hasn't needed to.
And that's the other thing. Outside of re-signing Mookie Betts, which I think all of us can agree should have happened, this is the first time where he really felt like he needed to, and honestly, like I said, there's something to be said there. I'm going to be interested to see how Story ages. I mean, a 6-year deal. I'm still very concerned about him on the road, but other than that, it's a signing that the Red Sox need to make, and I think he's going to have a very good season. Well, James,
I'm pumped.
You should be, and I got to say, this has been a pretty good week for both of us, I would have to say. Trevor Story, impact bat, right? One of the big guys on the market. Without question, and actually, a quick side note before we move on to the Phillies. Did you see the reports that the Rangers were in there at the last second? I think that's very interesting for Trevor Story.
Well, here's the thing: is that he said he didn't want to move to second base, and Xander said he didn't want to move from shortstop.
Right.
But every team that was in on Story, besides the Yankees, would have made Story move to second base. He prioritized winning, and the Rockies offered him a better deal, and he said, "Well, the Red Sox gave me the best chance to win." Clearly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Trevor Story's smarter than that to realize what was going to go on there if he stayed there. So, yeah, without question. So going back to that, I mean, what a week, though. What a week to be a Red Sox fan. What a week, though, to be a Phillies fan as well. I mean, we're talking about an historic occasion in Philadelphia that happened this weekend. And if in case you haven't heard, I mean, Kyle Schwarber agreed to terms on, I believe it was Wednesday. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was Wednesday.
To
4 years, $79 million.
4 year, $79 million deal. And you know what? Phillies Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Phillies fandom, you see that deal, you're like, all right, you know what? This is good. This is what you need to do. This was obviously the front office's guy. They almost got it done before the lockout. Actually, Kyle even admitted that in his press conference on Monday. And he was the guy they wanted. They think he's going to be amazing at Citizens Bank Park. To take your stat, James, he's projected to hit around 41 home runs in Citizens Bank Park. If he played there last year, all of his home games, 41 home runs for Kyle Schwarber. And, it was a move that needed to be made. And, of course, there were still question marks. And I think a lot of Phillies fans were feeling, hey, this is good. Is it enough? I don't think so. But then something happened on Saturday night, and the Phillies owner, John Middleton, for the first time in the history of the franchise, decided that it is time to go over the luxury tax, and a narrative has been set in Philadelphia for the past 4 or 5 years now that he would not go over the tax unless it was for the right player that puts them over the edge. Before I talk any further, James, is Nick Castellanos the newest Philadelphia Philly? Is he the right player for them? And what does he do for this ball club that is now, forgive me if you disagree, a top 5 lineup in baseball?
How about yes and no?
Yes and no.
The only reason why I say no, this is not indicative on the Phillies or Castellanos, but in the postseason, defense really gets magnified.
Oh, boy.
And no. And this is not an indictment on the Phillies or Castellanos, but it's not like it's just a him problem. It's still a team-wide problem.
James, they got to get there first.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. Okay, we'll get into that later. This is a great signing two great signings by the Phillies. First, Kyle Schwarber. I mean, what he did last year, he had a career year last year. His OPS plus was 148. He was never above 130 before that. His OPS last season, Kyle Schwarber, 928, was never above 842 before that. Had a career high in pretty much every offensive category, his on-base percentage, his slugging percentage. He corrected a lot of the issues that plagued him the last couple of years, and hopefully that's a career correction for him, not just a 2021 contract year correction.
Well, the guy that helped him do that is with him again for the next 4 years.
Yes. And, I'm going to love Kyle Schwarber forever, even though he was only in Boston for half a season. Kyle from Waltham was the man. And the Grand Slam he hit in Game 3 of the ALCS, I mean, the energy at Fenway was unmatched with that. And what he did with the Nationals in June, especially, with the 16 home runs in 10 games? I don't know, whatever
Something
it was.
stupid, yeah.
It was Barry Bonds. It was a Barry Bonds type month. It was crazy. But the Phillies addressed that need, and that was a superb signing. That was someone who the Red Sox should have signed, but obviously they signed Story. The Phillies got Schwarber, and now they can move Schwarber to DH because of Castellanos. And I think what were the terms of Castellanos? 5 years,
5 years,
$100 million?
$100 million.
Great deal for the Phillies to deepen their lineup. I mean, you have Harper, you have Real Muto, you have Schwarber, and you have Castellanos as what, your 2 through 5 hitters?
2 through 5 is most likely
Who's
going to
lead
be.
Off then Segura?
No. They're going to lead off Schwarber most likely is what they're talking about.
Okay. That makes
Schwarber,
sense.
Segura, Harper, Castellanos, Hoskins, Realmuto. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah.
So I mean, look, it deepens the Phillies lineup. It's great. It's an impact bat that. In a hitter's ballpark should age well. He hasn't been plagued by strikeouts the last couple of years. He was tremendous in the first half of last year. Battled an injury and a little bit of a slump in the second half, but overall the last 2 years with the Reds, he was awesome and an early MVP frontrunner in both those years. High batting average. So I think if that high batting average can continue into the second half of seasons, that's just even better for the Phillies. The only thing that would worry me is the defense late in the season and in the playoffs, because obviously you have to get there first, and offense is more important, and if he's producing offensively, you can live with the defensive lapses. But the thing is, it's not just a him thing, it's a team-wide thing for Philadelphia.
So here's my thing. Putting aside the fact I'm a Phillies fan for a second, this move to me as a baseball fan was mind-boggling, because this, and I saw this quoted fantastically by Matt Galb of The Athletic, this is a middle finger to how you assemble baseball teams. The Philadelphia Phillies right now on their roster of these superstars that they have about 2 to 3 homegrown talents.
For sure.
They have given out ginormous contracts to acquire almost all their talent. They now have 5 players making $20 million or more.
Which will either be really good or really bad.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But taking a look at Castellanos for a second, right? The Schwarber edition, it's great. Is this enough? I hope. I don't know. Castellanos, when they make that decision, first of all, I will say, 5-100, I agree, is an unbelievable steal, because this is a guy who wanted 7 years before the lockout. This is a guy who was projected to get 6-160, 6-180. I got to be honest, James, I think his market absolutely crashed once Bryant signed, and Dave Dombrowski, being the aggressive guy he is, said, you know what? He went into the front office and said, John Middleton, this is the guy. We are not going to get a guy of this talent at this price ever again. We need to go over the luxury tax right now. And that's what they did.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense, and I think it's a great signing for the Phillies, especially in that division. I mean, you have 2 other teams, the reigning World Series champion Atlanta Braves, who added Matt Olson, and of course the New York Mets, who are going to have a fully healthy Jacob deGrom, added Max Scherzer, added Chris Bassett. Francisco Lindor should bounce back. Those are going to be 3 really competitive teams all season long, going at each other's throats.
Yeah, and it's just, like I said, going back to the idea of this being a middle finger, right, to how you assemble baseball teams. The defense obviously is the first thing everyone said. Can I offer you a point here, though? We are replacing Andrew McCutchen in left field with either Castellanos or Schwarber, who is worse, but not by much. Andrew McCutchen is not a great fielder in this day and age. Other than that, nothing changes on the Philadelphia Phillies. Right. It's not like they got... People saw this signing and they saw 2 defensively inept players and said, oh my God, their defense is the worst in history. It's not going to be the worst in history. It's going to be bad. Don't get me wrong.
No, but
it is not
what
marginally
I was saying is that
worse.
they did nothing to improve it.
They did not do anything.
That was
to
the only
improve it.
thing.
No, and I do think that is something which this is why this is so interesting. The Phillies are over the tax. The next penalty is not until $10 million more away. Dave Dombrowski probably has free reign at this point, which, by the way, I will point out, has not blown up the farm system yet to assemble this team, has used his resource of money.
That's coming.
That's what I'm saying. This July, when the trade deadline happens, or whenever it is, I know it varies now, it could be in August. Whenever this happens, it's time for Dave Dombrowski to do his special and go ahead, blow up the farm system, trade for a center fielder, trade for a reliever, trade for defensive help, whoever they may be, And it's just the possibilities are endless.
I love Deal Dave, but can he build a bullpen? That's also the big question. He did it for 1 year in Boston, but
he only needs to do it for 1 year here too as well, and he will be remembered as a legend. We're talking about a franchise that is a deep-rooted baseball city, a team that a city that loves its baseball team. I'd argue more than anything, except recently the Eagles, of course, with the Super Bowl championship, but playoff baseball belongs to Philadelphia. It hasn't been there for 10 years, and if you were John Middleton, kudos to Jack Middleton because he said enough is enough. We don't have the prospects. We don't have talent anywhere else. We do have money. Let's throw some money at people and hope it works.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think both signings are great for the Phillies. Kudos to Dombrowski. Kudos to Middleton. They signed 2 impact bats. That's going to deepen their order, and I really think right now there's no clear-cut division winner in the NL East. I think all three, you could make an argument for all 3 of those teams to win the division, and all 3 of those teams will probably make the playoffs one way or another.
I agree 100%. We'll get into predictions as we get closer, probably a week before opening day. I have 3 teams from the NL East in the postseason.
Yeah, we can get into them next week.
Yes, we will get into them next week. That'll put us about a week out from baseball. One final point on both of this. $79 million for Schwarber, $100 million for Castellanos, 4 years for Schwarber, 5 for Castellanos. Together, do not equal the deal that Chris Bryant brought. And fans and analysts alike agreed that Chris Bryant was the fit for Philadelphia. I'm going to be honest, James, I don't think he was ever really on their radar. I think these were the 2 guys. And I want to point out again, the second that he opted out, I said, this is the guy the Phillies need to get. And they got him. They got him, plus it's going to be an interesting season in the NL East this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of the NL East, why don't we talk about the only other team that was rumored really to have interest in Castellanos at the end, and that's, of course, the Miami Marlins. They ended up cheaping out. They didn't want to go the 5th year. They were offering him around 3 to 4. So they went out and they got another big bat, and this one is an interesting move. This is Jorge Soler to the Marlins for 3 years, $36 million. Now, I want to give the Marlins some fair attention here because you might laugh at me, but we might be looking at the second, potentially how injuries work out first, in rotation in the NL East. This is an unbelievable rotation.
The Marlins?
Yes, and this is a team that I don't think should be taken lightly. The Nationals are going to be a joke this year. That's fine. Nelson Cruz is going to be on a different team come July. No one really cares about them, and that's whatever. They're in a rebuilding year. They'll be good in a couple years. The Marlins are not like that anymore. The Marlins need to spend more money, and they did spend money here. My thing is, though, you shouldn't be discounting them as this throwaway team, and this addition makes them even scarier.
For sure, and I think if you look at another thing on the Marlins for today, no players from the Christian Yelich deal are now still on their roster. All 4 of those guys are gone.
That's a great point.
But the Marlins needed to spend. They were in on Castellanos for a while. Obviously, that didn't happen. But getting Soler, especially with the universal DH, is huge. You get that big bat, and it's something that kind of shows that not the we're here, but it's like, we're not going to roll over and lose 105 games.
It's we're here in lowercase letters.
Yeah, but I mean, kudos to them. They needed to do it, especially after Jeter stepping down. But I mean, you look at the Marlins rotation: Sandy Alcantara, Trevor Rogers, Pablo Lopez, Jesus Luzardo,
Sixto Sanchez coming back,
of course. Sixto Sanchez, even Edward Cabrera.
Yeah,
I mean that's a really good young rotation. That if you can supply some offense to it, they might win more games than people think.
James, I want to point out, though, something that concerns me about this deal. I mean, it's a ton of money for a guy who was pretty close to playing Japanese baseball a couple years ago. I mean, this guy was not good before he was traded to the Atlanta Braves. And, of course, he lit it up and was a World Series hero, and that's why he got this contract. But we're talking about a guy that hit 190 in the first half. Of course, had that amazing year, and I believe it was, 2019 when he hit 42 home runs.
46, I think.
46, yeah. He didn't look too hot in 2020. He looked horrible in the first half of last year. Had a good second half, and, I mean, hey, kudos to him. He turned into $36 million. But I don't know about you. I don't see this deal being anything too special for them. He'll hit a couple long home runs, but I don't think he's going to be the type of impact bat that they were hoping for with a guy like Castellanos.
Yeah, but I think another thing with them is that they know they're not going to compete in that division, seriously the next 3 years. Like this is not something that's going to eat them alive, especially at $36 million. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can get out of it after 3 years and less than $40 million. And if it works out, you flip him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, without question.
I think that's something else. If it works out and you're not contending, you flip him to rebuild that farm system, rebuild that pipeline, and get some legit offense.
And I think legitimately that's what we will see happen. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did that have an opt-out in it?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure as well, but I do know that the AAV splits were a little weird on that. He's making less than 10 this year, and then he's making a ton at the end. Not sure what that's about. Not like it matters. I don't really think they're making any other huge acquisitions. But, that's Jorge Soler to the Marlins. They didn't get Castellanos, but I guess they got something, and that deal it's going to be an interesting one to watch, especially going to a park where not exactly resetting his value. That is a hard park to hit home runs in.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
Yeah, so Jorge Soler to the Marlins, 3 years, $36 million. That's pretty much all the huge signings we wanted to talk about. We got about 10 to 15 minutes left here on the show. I want to talk about a couple underrated moves I like. James, if you have any as well, please feel free to chime in. But why don't we start with the Los Angeles Angels and what they're doing with the bullpen? I have absolutely loved watching the Angels bolster their bullpen over the past couple weeks, or the past week, I should say. The two big ones that they got before the lockout were, of course, re-signing Iglesias, signing Aaron Loop, who was fantastic last year. But in the past week, they not only got Archie Bradley coming off of a solid year for the Phillies for another one-year deal, and Ryan Tepera, who everyone who listens knows how much I love Ryan Tepera. I wanted him badly. He's one of the best relievers in baseball. James, do you think this is enough to finally get a team with two of the best players in the sport's history potentially into the playoffs?
You'd hope. And if it's not this year, hopefully it's next year. But Trout, Ohtani, but especially Trout, they need to get to the playoffs soon. And I think Rendon is going to have a big bounce-back year. He was hurt last year, but finished 9th or 10th in AL MVP voting in 2020 in his first year in Los Angeles. It's an offense that can mash and will mash for days. It's a rotation that, besides Ohtani, is still looking for that next guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new rule today, the Shohei Ohtani rule. If a pitcher, I think it's great. If a pitcher is the DH, he can still remain in the game as the DH when he comes out. So now Shohei Ohtani can remain in the game as a hitter even after he's done pitching, which will help them. They don't have to pull him. They don't have to play the game like an NL game. So, I think the Angels have done enough, and if it's not this year, then hopefully it's next year. But that division, there's definitely room right now because the Astros will still be good, but they lost Correa, and they didn't address the shortstop position. The Mariners are going all in, but then Texas is early in its rebuild, despite the star power of Semien and, of course, Seager. And Oakland is a full-blown fire sale. Mm-hmm. So that division has some room in it, and the AL has some room in it. So we'll see.
And expanded playoffs as well should definitely help them. I mean, we're talking.
It'll help one of those AL West teams. Probably Seattle.
I think it's safe to say at least two AL West teams are going to be in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, I for the sake of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, I hope it's the Angels. It's a fun baseball team. They got a lot of stars on there. Point I want to bring it back to real quick before we talk about any other signings. Anthony Rendon, I love as a bounce back candidate. That guy's an incredibly talented baseball player, and it feels like he signed with LA and everyone forgot who he was, which should not be the case because I still think he's got a couple good years left in him.
He's got 3 or 4 good years left. He was hurt last year. He'll be just fine.
And in 2020 as well, it was just weird. He wasn't. I don't really like counting that season for a lot of different.
It was COVID
things.
year, but he had a good year. He finished 10th in MVP voting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a lot of people are forgetting that, right? Even if it was a weird year, he is still Anthony Rendon. There's a reason why he got the contract that he did, and I think he's going to have a fantastic bounce back year. And if he does. Whew, man, Ohtani, Trout, Rendon, that is a very, very good middle-of-year lineup right there.
For sure.
James, any underrated signings you want to talk about here before we, in the last 10 minutes, here talk about some of the guys who haven't signed?
Oh, I think, Jake Diekman of the Red Sox, I think a lefty to solidify the back end of the bullpen. But I think a guy, that's just someone who I wanted to give shine to. But I think a guy that hasn't signed yet, Michael Conforto. I mean, turning down a 9-figure extension before the season began last year, and now really having no market materializing. He's going to have to take a 1 or 2 year deal with an opt out after one somewhere, rebuild his value because we've seen what he's like at his best. He's worthy of $100 million, but he came off. He picked the worst time to have the worst season of his career. And, it was injury-plagued. He wasn't good. The problems that plagued him early in his career plagued him again with his swing. He's going to have to rebuild his value. Hopefully he goes to a contender. I mean, there are teams that are in need of an outfielder, of a Michael Conforto. If the Red Sox didn't sign Story, I would be screaming into the microphone to have him to have the Red Sox go sign him. But guess what? Look, on a 1-year deal, why not go sign him? The Red Sox are already over the luxury tax. You need a right fielder. Jaron Duran and Jackie Bradley Jr. are the 2 right fielders right now. Why not go sign Michael Conforto for 1 year and $16 million?
I think
just see what happens. But
there's a lot of teams that should be doing that. In my opinion.
Tampa Bay was in on Freeman. I'm surprised Tampa Bay doesn't just go take a 1-year flyer on Michael Conforto. You look at not the Phillies, obviously, but even Atlanta. Outside of their top 4, their lineup isn't incredibly strong. He's familiar with the NL East. He's familiar with the ballpark in Atlanta. Why not go sign him to a 1-year deal? Look, it's going to take $15 to $20 million, but it's only 1 year. Or you give him like a 2-year, $35 million deal. You front load that first year, give him an opt out, and see what happens. I think if the Chicago White Sox want to, I know they have so much young talent, but if they want to continue to just add, why not go the Minnesota Twins?
Yeah.
It's like the Texas Rangers are looking for offense left and right, and I know they signed 2 guys, but again, this is only a 1-year deal. Why not go after the Milwaukee Brewers?
Yeah.
The Milwaukee Brewers need a left-handed bat in the outfield.
even the Blue Jays could go for him, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
You don't know about that?
I just in terms of if they're willing to go over the tax, but also where would he play?
They'd find a spot for
They
him.
just seem logjammed everywhere.
They are
like
logjammed everywhere,
if they sign anyone else.
That's for a good reason. But no,
definitely.
I think the point stands. Yeah, there's a tremendous amounts of suitors for Michael Conforto. I guess it's just, is there something we don't know here? Because this seemed like a guy. Of course, he had a really bad year last year, but he's still Michael Conforto, and I think on a one-year deal especially, this is a Josh Donaldson-type player where he takes it, resets his value, and gets a ridiculous contract.
This is a guy from 2017 to 2020, made an all-star team, had 30 home runs in 3 of those 4 seasons, had over 90 RBIs in 3 of those 4 seasons, had an OPS over 900 in 2 of those 4 seasons. This is a guy who's consistently posted in the major leagues. He had one bad injury-plagued year.
Yep.
If he traded 2018 with 2021, it wouldn't matter. That nobody would remember that. But of course, it happened at the worst time. So, Conforto will be signed before opening day. What if the Dodgers signed him? What if the Dodgers signed him?
We'll put it over $300 million.
But here's another thing: is that what if the Padres get rid of the Hosmer or Myers salary by attaching a high end prospect, and they go out and sign Conforto to replace Myers? Now because it's only for 1 year. Now, in order to get rid of that salary, the Padres are going to have to attach a legitimate major league talent or a top tier prospect to get rid of that salary. Now, some people have suggested, the Red Sox go get Myers to play right field if they attach Capuano or they attach Chris Paddock.
Yep.
Or if they attach,
Yep.
C.J. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, any one of those top-level prospects. We'll see what happens with Myers and with Hosmer, but I think one of those two will be gone before opening day.
I think they almost have to be, and it perplexes me even more of why they weren't a little more aggressive with this, because once the news that Fernando Tatis Jr. was going to be out for a little bit of time, I mean, they seem like the perfect fits for a guy like Castellanos, like a big impact bat to give them the edge, not even the edge, just to keep up with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
But they have their prospect, their farm system is loaded, and I know they haven't made the playoffs, but I think they don't want to logjam anyone down the road for cheaper, controllable talent.
That's fair, but at the end of the day, I mean, we're trying to get to the playoffs here, and especially if you're the Padres, who a lot of people had in the World Series last year and collapsed in utter ridiculous fashion to end the season. I mean, you got to make a statement here, and we got about 4 or 5 minutes here. I just want to say it again, okay? Fernando Tatis Jr., what a horrible deal. I'm sorry. This guy was signed to this mega contract before he played 162 games. He's hurt again, and he's hurt because of some asinine reason. The dude fell off his motorcycle over the offseason.
Look, the motorcycle accident is inexcusable, but I still think it's too early to call it a bad deal.
How is it too early, James? He signed that before he played 162 million.
Why?
He's been hurt 4 separate times.
He's got 13 years left, including this year. What? No, seriously, over the next 10 years, if he wins an MVP and wins a World Series, that's not a bad deal. That's why I'm saying it's too early.
That's fine, but I'm sorry.
And he's 23. That's the thing.
Yeah, he is 23, and I will give him that. And this is a guy who has a lot of talent, but I think it's also a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of brains. I mean, come on. When you are Fernando Tatis Jr., and I don't want to take anything away from this guy. This guy's one of the most electric, most talented players in baseball. But if you are Fernando Tatis Jr., what are you doing screwing around on a motorcycle when you need to lead your team to a postseason?
I agree with that, but I also think one of the reasons why this wasn't reported earlier is because of the lockout. He couldn't report to the team. He couldn't go see team doctors, whatever it may be.
That doesn't mean he should be doing it.
Look, the motorcycle is completely reckless. I understand what you're saying in terms of why give him a deal before 162, but in terms of they probably projected out the future money if he continued at the rate that he was at. And again, if he wins a World Series and an MVP or 2 in San Diego over the next 10 years, that deal is the best deal in their franchise's history.
All right, well, that's going to be one to watch for sure. Definitely a lot of different takes here on the Fernando Tatis Jr. trade. A little bit over 3 minutes here left. Why don't I just ask you quickly a couple guys who are projected to be moved before opening day. Tell me if they are or if they're waiting until the deadline.
Before we get in, Montas and Minaya did just agree to arbitration deal in the A's. Figures aren't out yet, but they both did agree to deals to avoid arbitration. Soto just got $17 million in arbitration from the Nats.
Did you see what Turner got?
$21 million. Trey Turner got $21 million from the Dodgers. Devers got $11.2 million from the Red Sox.
That's
some
ridiculous.
big arbitration figures. Josh Bell got $10 million from the Nats.
That's a lot of money for another guy who got a lot. Was coming off a great season, but Teoscar Hernandez got $10.6 million.
He had a great season last year.
He did.
Well
all right,
deserved.
So guys who might be traded, right? Montas, Minaya, you think they're being traded before opening day now after this?
I think Minaya is.
Minaya is.
I really think Sean Minaya is. I think Montas will get traded, but not before opening day. I think it'll be at the closer to the deadline.
Let me give you another name that I think at the deadline is going to fetch a huge haul: Lou Trevino.
Yeah. Lou Trevino. I'm surprised he wasn't traded before opening day, but Lou Trevino will get traded.
100%. All right. Why don't we? Oh man, I mean, you got to think of some other guys here because the Oakland A's have pretty much been talking about everyone. But we asked this last week, and you said yes, he's on a different team before opening day. Is that still the case for Craig Kimbrell?
I know there hasn't been much action, but it has to be, right?
It has to be because why else would you sign Joe Kelly, right?
Yeah. And here's another thing that I want to touch on, completely unrelated.
Sure.
The Orioles were rumored to offer Correa 10 years, $300 million. Why would they not have given that deal to Machado? That's what Machado signed for with the Padres. Why would they not have? They probably could have signed Machado for $270 million over 10 years. Why would they not offer Manny Machado that? He could have been this generation's Mr. Oriole and kept them relevant because they would have had to stay relevant if Machado was there.
Well, and the other thing is, like, they're a team that if they signed Correa to this deal that they were rumored to have offered him, that's a rebuild that's looking a lot faster than you may think.
It wouldn't have had an impact this year in terms of their contention.
But take a look at the guys on that team. Hayes, Mullins, right? They got a lot of great pieces. They still got Bowman.
Mancini.
Mancini.
But then you have Adley Rutschman, you have Grayson Rodriguez in the system, Heston Kierstad. You have a lot of guys in the pipeline. Now, one thing about the Orioles pipeline, as great as it is, it's the number one farm system in baseball. Besides Grayson Rodriguez, they don't really have any elite arms. So how will that hurt their development, especially in the AL East?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's a what-if scenario because the Correa didn't go to
I'm just saying in general, when all these guys come up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, we're going to have to... they're an interesting team. Like you said, best farm system in baseball, but still a lot of question marks. There's been a lot of talk about guys like Mullins being traded. I just don't see that being the case. I just do not see Cedric Mullins at this point being traded, so I won't ask you about him. Let me ask you about one more guy, though, to close out the show here. Brian Reynolds. In my opinion, deadline, major haul.
I'm trying to see. Hold on.
Okay.
The Jays agreed with Vladdy Jr. at $7.9 million, but I'm looking something up for Brian Reynolds real quick.
Okay.
The Yankees agreed with Gallo at
Are you trying to see if he agreed? Because I think he did.
Yeah, I know.
No, they did not.
I know him and tweeted it. They did not agree. Okay, that's what I was trying to see. So he has, 4 years left?
He's got 3-4 years of control, and he's really young, and he just had an all-star season.
I mean, look, the Pirates are going to need to build around him and Brian Hayes. But I guess if they want to rebuild that system, they probably should trade him because they're not going to contend anytime soon.
That's what I'm going to say. I don't think they're 4 years away from contention, so you might as well trade him.
They might be 4 years away from contention. A lot can happen in 4 years.
But at that point, it's the last year of his contract. All right, fine. I guess not.
I don't think they'll. I do not think they'll trade him this year.
You don't think they'll trade him? All right. Well. With that said, I mean, that'll pretty much wrap that up. We had a huge, exciting show, lots of signings, lots of trades. The majority of them are pretty much over now, but we got spring training baseball in full swing. Games have been going on. Next week we'll have even more. We'll be talking more about the latest happenings around spring training, and we will be officially a week away from opening day, and we can start giving some of our predictions. I think next week it's probably good to go ahead and do some of the full MLB breakdown, divisions, playoffs, stuff like that. We'll do player awards the next week. The next week will put us, I believe, 1 day before opening day.
2 days, I think.
2 days before opening day. So that'll be the schedule for the next 2 weeks here. Exciting times. Baseball is back, getting ready for the regular season. And as always, thank you all so much for listening. We'll be live again next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on WCUA Radio. Remember, go ahead, follow us on Instagram at NatPastimeCap. Get all the updates for our show whenever it's posted on YouTube and podcast form and all that good stuff at NatPastimeCap. And with that said, I've been your host, Andrew Snaith, here with my co-host, James Higgins, and Robbie Cruz via phone tonight. Have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Peace out.